right, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, we want to dive into a critical conversation about strengthening our democratic institutions. Our Fourth Republic has endured 26 years. That's that's something that's never happened before in the history of our country, a testament to our resilience as a people and our commitments to the democratic ethos. Yet, despite this milestone, concerns remain about the strength, the true strength of the institutions that are meant to uphold our democratic values. As I said earlier, if you reflect on key moments in our history, the June 12 debacle stands out as a painful but pivotal chapter. It exposed the fragility of our electoral system and the immense power of the people's will. But have we moved past the lessons of the era? Are the structures meant to protect democracy, like the judiciary, the legislature, electoral bodies, functioning as they should? How about the rule of law, limited civic education? How do they contribute to these institutional gaps? More importantly, how can we rebuild trust, ensure accountability, create systems that are not only resilient but also representative of the people's needs? Well, four gentlemen join us this morning to have this conversation. In the studio with me here is Dr. Gbenga Adeoye, who is a chartered accountant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
He's also a public affairs analyst. We also have Dr. Abiola Shomodi, who is a former vice chairman of the APC in Canada. He joins us virtually. And two gentlemen on your screen right now are Honorable Bela, who is a former member of the House of Representatives, as well as Honorable Francis Waive, who is a chairman, House Rules and Business Committee. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let me begin with you, Mr. Adeoye. General assessment.
Good morning, Ayo.
Yeah, thank you. General assessment. 26 years down the line, 32 years after the June 12 debacle, has democracy held sway? Or is it what some people say, we're not in a democracy yet, we are in a civil rule?
Okay, well, I think if we're looking at democracy in Nigeria and leadership, we need to go back to history. We had from 1960 to 1966 the parliamentary system of government. And then you had the likes of Chief Obafemi Awolowo in the opposition party in the parliament. The regions were being developed at their own pace, of course, rapidly. In the southwest, the north was developing. But if you look at the incursion of the military in 1966, through that coup by Kaduna Nzego, the reason they adduced for, breaking into that democratic system was that the cabinet members were corrupt, and the leaders were not serving the interests of the people. So we had a problem, 1966. You also recall that that coup could be regarded as a failed coup because those guys that planned the coup were not the people that reap the reward.
Okay.
Albeit people said, oh, that must be a coup from the southeast, but it's not neither here nor there, because people will tell you Kaduna Nzegu speak Hausa fluently, even more than Igbo language. But then Hiroshi came in, and then not long after, 6 months after, he was also killed. That's in 1966. So then you had General Gowon on board from 1966 to 1975. Now, if you look at what happened in 1967, because we're looking at how people fare from different regions, how people feel marginalized. Even now, when you look at the upper class, the middle class, the very rich and the poor, things that lead to agitation. So you had the Igbos now said, okay, if we cannot get the kind of representation we want in the Supreme Military Council, which was inaugurated by Irosi when he came on board, then they ended up saying we wanted to be on our own. And that was what led to the Biafran War, which we call the Civil War. And predominantly, that was what Gowon battled with in 3 years of his administration, up to 1970. Now, he was out of the country in 1975 when he was also removed, and then Muritala came on board. Now, if you check, the Muritala regime, where Obasanjo was second in command, was also all about, oh, these guys are corrupt, they were not leading properly, and then Muritala became the leader. You recall all the things that came up, even clothes came up in town. Muritala, there is Muritala that. Before you know it, Muritala was killed. And you recall, because of his simple life, he was driving, Lieutenant Akintunde was with him as his aide-de-camp. His driver then was Sergeant Adamu Michika. They were both going to work. And then the petrol station adjacent was where Dimka was, and then crossed to kill them. That coup failed because they didn't plan it very well, and then Obasanjo emerged. Now, and I want you to give it to Obasanjo, because if you look at Gowon from 1966 to 1975, it was like Nigeria didn't make an attempt to say, let's return to democracy. That was why you had the likes of Obafemi Awolowo continuously fighting, and it appears that he was against the government, the military government. So Obasanjo now put in motion a plan to return to democracy.
But I think that started actually under Muritala, because...
Yes, under Muritala.
Yes.
And the military guys felt the plan of Muritala was not to perpetuate himself in office. That was one of the reasons the Dimka people pursued to remove them. They wanted to enjoy the kind of tenure that Gowon had. Okay. And so Obasanjo was wise in the sense that he executed the plan of his boss. Because there was already a draft committee. Yes, on ground. And so you had, so our first republic was truncated by the Kaduna Nzegu coup in 1966. So we had the Second Republic, 1979 to 1983. That was also truncated by a coup where Buhari came to power. And so we must have it on record that these are the people that truncated our democracy. We cannot forget them. And that's why I used to tell people an average lawyer is an historian. You need to read about your country. So, and when you look at what the Buhari regime, what they talk about as reason for coming on board, was also corruption, this, and so on. Now, IBB now look at that government and felt the people were suffering. This kind of government is anti-people and so on. He too came in. He too came in. And if you look at IBB, he also stayed for many years. And then 1990, 89, 90, he began. So we are talking of 10th Republic, but I would say it's 9.5 Republic. Because what we had, you know, some people won election as governor, people went to Senate, but we didn't have the executive arm fully, 1993. Yeah. So that election was annulled. So that's why I say 9.5. Now, thank God for those who fought for democracy. The current president, several people, and you could see the award that was given on June 12th. Now, take a look at the reasons for military to take over power. Every time. Corruption, that people are not being taken care of. So we haven't really gone past that phase, is what you're saying? So the agitation keeps coming up. And so the need for us to be careful. right?
Okay.
Of course, military rule it's not fashionable anymore.
Yeah.
But you then look at it, so the Third Republic more or less like truncated by annulment, so that's why I say it's 10 and a half. Now you had the Fourth Republic, 1999 to 2003, and then the Fifth, 203 to 207. The guy there was sick, he couldn't continue, and then Jonathan came in. And then you had 2011, 2015, 2019, and then 2023 that we're running now.
So have we moved further?
So before we cannot agree that we have moved forward, we then need to look at the 9 types of leadership style.
We'll come back to that one. Let me engage a few other people who have joined us this morning. Well, Honorable Bila, I'm wondering what your own thoughts are. We've had quite a history lecture here already, and I'm sure you would understand. You have your own perspectives as well. You have been in the National Assembly, so the question is whether or not the democratic institutions that are supposed to uphold what we have can hold. Would you say we have held on for 26 straight years, or we are just managing to remain afloat? Honorable Bila, that's for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ayo, and thank you for having me on the program. I want to say that, in my own opinion, Nigeria's democracy will still be considered to be fledgling even after 26 years. Yes, we appreciate the fact that people always refer to other developed climes who have had democracies for hundreds of years, but it's always important to note that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have seen and should have been able to adapt and adopt what is being considered to be the tenets of democracy. So when you look at that, then you would now start to realize that, in my own opinion, we have not started thriving as a democracy in Nigeria. Now, what are the basic tenets of democracy? Of course, we know the age-old definition that people say, although arguably some people think it's not very accurate. Democracy is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, which is apt in terms of what the whole essence of a democracy is. And I appreciate your panelists in the studio who took us back history lane. But like he pointed out, have those circumstances changed? In our current democratic system, we have certain tenets of democracy that are not being observed. The rule of law, the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, the freedom of participation. We have a government that does not recognize the rulings of court. Court decisions are not upheld or recognized. Are the people really free today to express themselves? Are the people participating in this democracy? In the last election, only about 15.6 million people elected the current administration. This is the most unpopular, in my own opinion, administration in the history of our return to democracy in 1999. It is on record, where a serving president was elected with 8-point-something votes out of a registered vote number of about 93.5 million as of the last count of INEC. And these are things that, as we continue this conversation, we need to start to look at what the problem is that we're having as a country. The lack of participation of the people, the lack of confidence in the democratic institutions. So I would say that our democracy is still fledgling. I would say that our democracy is still faulty. We do not have the kind of democracy that is envisaged, that our progenitors envisaged when they championed the cause of democracy. And this is something that we must admit and come to terms with.
Honorable Waive, thank you very much, Honorable Wheeler. Honorable Waive, I'll come back to you. I'll come to you on that one. Former Vice President Professor Yemi Oshimajo said that we should find every way to strengthen and not expose or exploit our fault lines. And it would seem like those fault lines are being exploited by some quarters, particularly bearing in mind one of the institutions of a democracy, which is electoral institutions. Voter education is should I say, is at an all-time low. Perhaps education that should actually start with awareness. So if we're to look at the institutions, one after the other, let's start with the democratic institution of the voter or the voting process, electoral voter education, voter awareness, voter whatever it is that we need to look at. How politically educated, politically aware, politically savvy would you say the average Nigerian is? The reason I ask that question, Honorable, is because we hear, and you would probably want to speak to that as well, that in some cases, in a good number of cases, the voter expects a parliamentarian, a member of the National Assembly or a State House of Assembly to do something for them, to erect an infrastructure for them, in order just to validate that they are doing something for them when they go to Abuja or when they go to the State House of Assembly. What's your take on the strength or otherwise of that leg of our democracy?
Thank you very much for having me. I must say that our democracy is a work in progress. I will not join those who say that it is just civil rule. It's a matter of semantics maybe, but we have made a lot of progress. Take the electoral process that you talked about. In the Second Republic, you could hear of ballot box snatching. But that is gone. And then today you hear of vote buying. So people now know that if you snatch the ballot box, it is useless. So there's some improvement taking place. And I would like to acknowledge that changes are taking place. Right now we have the BVAS that has been used, and it will only get better. I want to look at things from the optimistic point of view. Even in the United States, the last midterm elections for Congress, voter participation was less than 40%. That's one of the world's oldest democracy. So if you compare that with Nigeria, we are just 26 years old, as it were, and then you know the problems we have with the register, with INEC, then you will know that the voter turnout as an issue can be resolved with citizens' engagement, voter education, civic responsibilities being touched. Today, the National Orientation Agency has gone to sleep and is being neglected. In between the elections, the National Orientation Agency and other organs of government ought to help to strengthen the electoral system by voter education. So we are making progress, but slowly. You wouldn't tell me that a parliament, for instance, that is able to invoke the doctrine of necessity at the crossroad of our country has not made progress. You wouldn't tell me that a parliament that was able to stop a third-term bid, breaking the constitution, has not made progress. So there are a lot of things that have happened, and today our parliamentarians are becoming experienced, becoming vast in the job assigned to them. For our electoral process, some progress has been made. We must celebrate that while we begin to push for improvements. Real-time voting, online voting, and all of that. There are proposals currently before the National Assembly for amendment of the Electoral Act. We must all come together and make sure that that happens. The voters' education and INEC as an institution needs to be strengthened such that INEC's capacity to deliver will be strengthened and people will have faith in the electoral process. I think that's what we need to work on. But I wouldn't say that we are where we used to be. We have gone far from there. In 26 years, everything is not lost. There's hope, and now there is even renewed hope. Things will get better for our country.
Well, Honorable, still with you. You haven't quite spoken to one of the issues that I raised, the fact that the electorate expects you, a parliamentarian, to build roads, to supply water, to build hospitals and all of those things. It's the level of awareness of whether or not they know that that is not part of your constitutionally assigned responsibilities. That's one of the things we need to educate people about, isn't it?
Yeah, that definitely is a challenge to our democracy at the moment. And I'm glad you raised it, because the media is also one of the institutions for sustaining democracy. And what you are doing is very good to help us educate our people. Most of our constituents think that we are in office to pay school fees, hospital bills, attend funerals, and that kind of thing, and then do what the executive ought to do: build schools, hospitals, and roads. So there's a need for civic education. When we were in primary school, and during Gowon's time, there was civic education as a subject taught in primary school. I think we need to go back to do that, not just for our children, but even the adult population, so that people will be able to understand what the job of a legislator is: a lawmaking, representation, oversight of the MDAs. These need to be passed down to our people, such that that understanding would reduce the pressure that lawmakers face across the country to do what the executive ought to do. So if you are not building roads and hospitals and classrooms, you are seen not to have performed, whereas you may have contributed tangibly to the democratic process of lawmaking, in constitutional review, for instance, in the laws that we make for the good governance of our country, that improves the living standard of our people and ensures that the welfare of the citizen is the priority of government. So it's a challenge we are still facing, and one of the avenues to deal with it is the media being one of the democratic institutions, as it is everywhere in the world. The fourth estate of the realm need to do that to ensure that our people get educated. And I believe as we are on this program, people are listening from across the country, and we need to read the Constitution. We need to read what happens in parliaments around the world, so that we can educate our people, and they will not be pushing for parliamentarians to do what they don't have the power to do.
Well, thank you. Well, Dr. Shomodi, I'd like you to speak to this. Beg your pardon, Dr. Shodi. I'd like you to speak to this as well, because one of the issues that we have had, well, maybe the federal government has been able to overcome that one, but the state governments, I'm not sure we can say the same. I'm talking about the independence of the various arms of government, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive. It would seem like all of that is still central. It would seem like we have not really escaped the monarchical mindset and the authoritarian nature of the military that Dr. Adeyu enumerated for us earlier. Talk to us about what we need to do to ensure that the weakness of these three institutions, the weakness of their independence, is addressed. How do you think we can address it?
Thanks so much for having me in the studio, and thanks for correcting my last name is Oshodi.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to the other panelists that have joined me on this great program. And congratulations to all Nigerians. This is the first time we're having a very long stretch of democracy, 26 years. That's cause for celebration. We've never had it so good. And thanks to the first panelists that, took us down the memory lane. History is very, very important. It took us a while to get here. And when you appreciate that level of history, you know that we've made substantial progress in our democratic journey. It might not be where we ought to be, but substantially, we are making lots of progress. In terms of the independence of the different arms of government, I think that's also work in progress. Democracy is not static. It's a dynamic institution. We keep improving on what we have. And that's where the current administration comes in. When they were able to secure a judgment at the Supreme Court that granted autonomy to the local governments. And there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of making sure that it's the people's representatives that serves in our local governments by conducting free, fair elections at state levels. That, we might not be there yet, but at least, there's a signal that we are heading in that direction. We have a lot of challenges with the current democratic journey, no doubt. But again, we have to believe in the system. We have to keep reforming the system. We have to keep bringing new ideas. We have to keep having this kind of conversations. We have to keep educating our people. We have to keep encouraging those, already saddled with the responsibility of managing our democracy. And we have to trust the institutions. We have to strengthen INEC. We need a voters' education, like one of the panelists, earlier said. So a lot of this, we need to continue, and we need to believe in the process. And at some point, we'll certainly, get the desired results. We need to persist and insist, that we want to make this democracy succeed. And I came across one research recently conducted amongst our youth. About 30% of them were alleged to be supportive of a military rule. That's quite concerning. It's like taking us 50 or 80 years backward. We shouldn't be having those kind of conversations.
That also speaks to the next issue that I want to raise with you, Dr. Adeoye, because, and thank you very much, Dr. Shudi. Over and over again, when we hear issues like this, what he just speaks to just one thing: trust. Trust in the process. And at the end of the day, when we talk about trust in the process, it's always about people. And who are the people at the forefront? The political class. Mm-hmm. Now, when we are talking about strengthening democratic institutions, do you think that the political class themselves understand the need to strengthen democratic institutions?
Okay, so it's important to state that the worst democracy is better than the best military system of government, because the military system of government is an autocratic style of leadership. You only get better at that time if you have a benevolent dictator who is not selfish.
But some people will argue with you on that one, Dr. Adeoye.
Yes. So
and the reason is this.
Because
look at what is happening in Niger.
Yes. So that's why I said, it's a balanced assessment that democracy is meant to put the leaders under checks and balances. Unfortunately, if you don't have separation of power, then you cannot achieve that. Your National Assembly, your state assembly, must play the role of check and balances. Now, you can only have that when you scale up the kind of people that are in leadership. Like I've always discussed with people who are in government, that I do not think those who don't have business should have any business in politics. So, you have people who are in government today, they don't have any second address. They don't have any work they're doing. And so they want to perpetuate themselves. There are people that have been in the National Assembly for 20 years, all right? And are you telling me that in their constituency, you don't have brilliant guys that can take over? So it's supposed to be that when you take up an assignment to participate in politics, is supposed to be sacrifice, motivated by desire to serve the people. So number one, the political positions must not be too attractive in terms of the reward that you get. from it. And that's what we call transactional style of leadership, where people feel, okay, once I get in here, I put in 10 billion, I'm going to get 90 billion. All right? So it has become like an investment for most people. And if you check those that are going into politics in recent times, so you see people sell their houses, sell their cars, sell their investment, and they say, don't worry, you're going to reap it back in 2 years, in 3 years. And right in our own eyes is happening. Therefore, I'm an accountant before I became a lawyer. In every investment, there is what we call payback period. The shorter the big payback period, the better the investment. And so people have now come to say that politics has the highest rate of return and the shortest payback period. And you cannot dispute this. How will somebody who wants to be a senator will have to spend 2 billion naira and then it's just to serve the people? No, I don't agree. You want to be a governor and you have to spend maybe 15 to 20 billion. It depends on the state you're talking about. You had our friend was describing, giving the analysis of the cost to be a senator, to be a governor, to go to House of Reps. So we need to also start from our primary school and have a subject called,
go back to civic education,
politics and governance and leadership as a course. And then we begin to tell the people, you have a right to participate. For example, if I say I'm going into politics now, my wife is going to be scared. My children will be scared. They're likely to kill you. Those who know you will also say, oh, they're going to ruin you. You're going to sell all your investments. So this is
it should not be like that.
Wrong.
I remember I saw a video of Michelle Obama herself saying when the husband wanted to run president, she said, are you out of your mind? Want us to lose all we have?
Yeah, so
but see how it turned out.
It's like an investment.
Yes.
And we need to change that.
Okay.
And that's why you see the criticism of Karl Marx against the capitalist system is all about this. And so you now compare some countries that are now practicing democracy, you see that they are kind of maybe communism, socialism, and then it's benevolent to the people.
Perhaps
but again, democracy is still the best option.
Tola has this, thank you. Tola has this comment, democratic institutions. We need to create a virtuous cycle of devolution, autonomy, and democratization of powers to local government levels, rather than build a vicious cycle of control and concentration of powers at the center. Let me ask you, Honorable Gbila, so that's one of the issues a number of people have about strengthening our democratic institutions. It will seem like everything is so central. And we're not devolving powers as the powers should be devolved. The federal government seems to have gotten it right over time, but we seem like we are still struggling at the states. We'll come back to that later. However, the question to you, Honorable Gbila, is this. Still aping the question that I raised with Dr. Adiri here. It will seem like the bar for getting into leadership, into government, is so low. In fact, the way the Constitution puts it, and I hope I'm still current, is that you only need to attempt WAEC.
You don't need to pass.
Attempts. Now, one of the institutions we have as a nation is this NIPS, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. Isn't it a bad idea for that to be the minimum benchmark? Attend NIPS, score well, before you can lead, even at the councillor level.
I'll be a tall order.
Okay, thank you very much, Ayo. Yes, before I answer that question, which is still related to what we're discussing about devolution of powers as well, let me use this opportunity to commiserate with my people who are being killed daily by herdsmen in the constituency. This still speaks to what we're talking about with regards to devolution of powers and this local government and even the state governments not being empowered enough because of some flaws in our constitution to be able to intervene for the protection of the lives of our people. And I will still come back to that. But let me point out what you have said. What you have said fundamentally is one of the challenges we have as a people. Our leadership recruitment process. I am one of those who is an advocate for the fact that our minimum qualification for taking or running for political office is too low. Talking about secondary school, with all due respect and regard to all those who have not had the opportunity to pursue an education, because of the peculiarities of our country, we need to admit that the level of illiteracy, the level of lack of exposure is high. And so if you expect people who emerge into these positions to be only of secondary school certificate level, then you fundamentally have a problem. In this country, people celebrate wealth no matter how it was obtained. Even ill-gotten wealth is celebrated. And that is another fundamental issue we have as a country. The cost of running for elections, like Doctor just said in the studio. There needs to be a way we can, and this is something that is still, it still behoves on the National Assembly, on the legislature to look at. Can we find a way, like it's done in other climes, for the people to start to contribute and take the responsibility for funding of elections away from individuals? That's why you see the credible people, the people with the acumen, the people with the pedigree are unable to participate.
Oh dear. Well, we'll definitely come back to that conversation. Most certainly come back to that conversation, because those comments are very, very important, and I'm pretty sure that Honorable Wivey will want to speak to that as well. But let me come to you, Dr. Shodi. Okay, Honorable Gwila, please continue.
So these are some fundamental things that we should begin to address. It is a concern and a failure, in my own opinion, to us, because I'm not speaking as if I'm not also part of the legislature. As a former member of the House of Representatives and a candidate for the Senate, it is concerning that the Supreme Court had to be the one to rule on the issue of local government autonomy. Why did it have to get to that stage? We need to be able to realize that the fulcrum of a democracy is the legislature. So in addressing that point, we need to start to realize that for the Nigerian people to start to become aware, I agree about the need for better orientation in terms of how to elect and to select those who would participate in becoming leaders of the people. And it's at this point that I must also mention the fact that we have a challenge with a lack of internal democracy in our political parties. And I'm happy Mr. President has tried to discountenance the concerns people have about the current government pursuing a one-party state, because one of the tenets of a democracy is multi-party participation. So that, and of course, the ability to have a virile opposition. So there are fundamental things that we need to begin to address in terms of the cost of elections in Nigeria, the lack of statutory provisions to enable the people to be the ones that are able to sponsor those who represent them, so that burden will be taken off, so somebody doesn't come and think that he has invested so much and he needs to recoup it. And then the systems for accountability and transparency, we need to start to look at the removal of immunity at various stages of elective office so people can be held accountable. These are challenges we have. There's too much power at the center. We're having a revenue allocation formula that has not been put in place by the legislature since we came back to a democracy. This is a concern. We are not addressing issues at the grassroots level. There's too much power at the center. That's why everybody is gravitating towards the center.
But isn't that all of the
functions?
Isn't that all the responsibility of the legislature, the National Assembly in particular? You have been in the National Assembly. What's the issue? Why is it a problem to quickly do what needs to be done?
So now that is part of why I'm mentioning this at this point. It is something that has been resisted by the executive, from my experience.
My understanding of the Constitution, my apologies, Honorable, but my understanding of the Constitution is that when you see the way the Constitution lists the three arms of government, the legislature comes first, and it has almost 500 people, as opposed to almost 500 people elected. In other words, appointed, employed by the people to supervise the job of one man. The president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, okay, maybe two people, and the vice president. So almost 500 people, or more than 400 people, supervising the job of two men. How can the executive be the one that has all the power?
Now, that is a very, very good point that you have mentioned. I always tell people that the legislature is actually the true representation of the people, and that is why when a military junta comes into power, what is the first institution they take out of the way? It's the legislature. Now, unfortunately, in Nigeria, because of our military history, everything seems to now be in the hands of the executive. You have the executive that does not respond to the resolutions of the House. You have the executive that does not respond to court judgments and court pronouncements. And that is where the Nigerian people need to rise up. The
Nigerian people rose up, Honorable, my apologies. The Nigerian people rose up to employ you, to the members of the National Assembly. The Nigerian people know that you have the power to what's that word now you say? You want to remove the president from office, impeach the president. But that never happens. Anyway, maybe that's a conversation for some future to come. Honorable Waive, let me ask you this. Part of the issues that he has raised and that we are raising here, because if we are going to have strong institutions, then we have to have strong individuals who can enforce the things that need to be done. Honorable Wheeler has spoken to the weakness of the political parties themselves, to a large degree, the lack of individual political philosophies that can strengthen any democracy. Now Dr. Adeye began by telling us the need for the concerns about the political class themselves. What is your take on the role of the political class, irrespective of political divide, to strengthen our political institutions? Because it look like some politicians see these weaknesses and they would rather exploit than strengthen them.
Yeah, I will use the opportunity to react to what Dr. Mentioned, using one brush to paint everyone in office, particularly in the legislature. I want to say there are very intelligent people, very well-educated people in the legislature. Mark Bila is a very brilliant fellow. He was with us in the 9th Assembly. And in this 10th Assembly, there are a lot of retired professors, army generals, permanent secretaries, lawyers, accountants, architects, a lot of well-educated people. So to just use a brush to paint everybody that people who don't do well, that go into politics, I don't think that is right. And then two, I must say that we are doing citizens education on a program like this. So to say that it is wrong for a parliamentarian to go into office for more than 1 or 2 times is not a service to our country. The legislature is like the wine, the older, the better. In the United States of America, some people have been in parliament for up to 40 years. I think that the parliamentarians who are noted to be good on their job should be retained. When you begin to change them and you do rotation and all of that, you end up having people who come newly to learn the ropes. Because in every parliament, every session, every assembly, there's a lot of training, a lot of peer review, a lot of traveling to watch other democracies. Now, why this fellow is just gaining his knowledge, knowing his left from his right, you vote him out, and you bring a new person in. And then at the end of the day, you say, oh, they are not doing well. It's because we don't have experienced people. Take the US Congress, for instance. The turnover is 8% thereabout. But in Nigeria, in the recent 2023 election, the turnover is about 80%. So you have only about 20 who knows the rudiments of parliamentary practice. I thank God that the Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, PhD, the current speaker, has invested into training and retraining of members of the 10th Assembly. Otherwise, in the beginning, it was challenging to have members perform their duties because of being new to parliament. So every electoral cycle, if you keep getting new people, you will keep having these problems, and our democracy will not be able to mature. I think that what should happen is that constituents should watch the performance of their elected representatives in parliament. Those who are good on the floor, those who contribute to national development, those who bring motions that can change the narrative in our society, those who are bold to speak truth to power, those who are taking this job serious, they should come again and again. And where you are changing some others, they will have people to learn from. But where you have only 20% coming from the previous, it's drowning. These challenges we face in our democracy that we're talking about today are because in essence, we are new, 26 years. Some other countries are celebrating 200 years. And for me, 26 years, we should celebrate that it's not been interrupted, and we are growing, we are learning, things are going to get better. For those we notice who are not abiding by the rule, we have a business to vote them out. And on programs like this, we should educate the Nigerian citizenry that the next election, make sure you make use of your power, your civic duty, your responsibility. Perform it and cast your vote. And you'll see that our country will get better for it.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Dr. Shode, I'll come to you in a bit, but I think that Dr. Ade is yearning to respond quickly to some of the issues.
Yes, I think he misunderstood what I said. What I said is that, political office holders, most of them have invested, and so politics has now become a place where you go to enrich yourself. And he talked about voting out people that are not performing. As a matter of fact, some young folks want to come out to contest, but they don't have the resources because the requirement is now huge. Of course, he spoke in two ways. He has also said that anyone who is not performing should be voted out. So
there's a balance.
So there's a balance there. So, and that's where I was pointing to. So you don't just sit down there for 20 years just doling out rice and beans. And of course, the constituency project that came up in the National Assembly is actually a palliative to address an aberration because people represented their constituency, and then they feel like the executive is executing road projects, infrastructure, and they are not getting from where they come from. And so they have to, it's not as if they are the one doing the project. So they just put in the budget and then follow up. But of course, we know some that also will take the money back from the contractor and you don't get things done. So by and large, people, many people, large percentage of people that are in politics, large percentage, their transactional leadership style. What is in it for me? Because I have invested. So until we do something about the cost of getting into power, you cannot eliminate corruption.
Okay. Dr. Shode, we're wrapping up now. We have less than 7 minutes to go on this program. If you would be making recommendations that we need to urgently initiate the process of strengthening democratic institutions from some of the issues that we have raised, and maybe some that we have not raised, what would be your first 3 issues that we must address to strengthen our democratic institutions?
Electoral reform. The confidence of our people in election is still very shaky. And we've made a lot of progress, to be honest with you, judging from what happened in 1999, 2003 elections. But we still have a long way to go. We need to keep reforming the laws. We need to decentralize and reform INEC. We need to clean up the electoral register. I don't believe 90 million people are truly registered on INEC. I don't believe they've even carried out any cleanup of that register for a very long time. You want to tell me that people are not dying or people are not relocating? you know, those kind of things. The INEC needs to clean up the register. We need to have the, you know, we need to know the number of Nigerians that are truly registered. And I'm aware that some voters register in 2, 3, 4, 5 different states on the current register. So lots of reforms needs to be done. The votes needs to show that they are counting. And we need laws, you know, to you know, prosecute electoral offenders. I know some are being prosecuted, but I don't think it's enough. We need more laws, you know, to you know, to tackle that challenge. And then you know, the leadership recruitment process as well needs to be strengthened. You know, lots of the panelists have mentioned the quality of leadership, you know, whereby people come into politics or see politics as a means of MMM, you know, you come with a lot of money and you make a lot of money out of it. There's no way you can serve the people that way. It should be, you know, we should de-emphasize, you know, corruption, you know, from our politics. I know that takes a lot of effort. And then the other thing we need to do is,
okay. Well,
yeah, we need to.
Yeah, while you're thinking about that, let me ask, there's one of the issues you raised is that we don't have enough laws. I'm not sure the parliamentarians agree with you on that one. Perhaps the issue is because one of the issues we've had, you also heard Honorable Gbila say the other time that sometimes when there are court pronouncements, the executive doesn't obey them, and this is not something that's just starting, and this dates back to quite a lot of a length of time. Let me take you to Honorable Gbila, saying that we don't have enough laws. So talk to us about that. Rule of law, so many people have said over time that if democracy will be stronger, then there should be, the rule of law has to be stronger. So what's your take on that one?
The fact that obviously we have enabling legislation in place. I agree with my colleague, Right Honorable Waive, that we have made progress, especially in the issue of enabling legislation. But that legislation as it exists, it now needs to still be improved upon. Because we now have a situation where we have technicalities being exploited in the legal pronouncements from our courts. So certain things need to be categorically and, you know, unequivocally indicated in our laws. And this is where I call upon my colleagues to do something about that expeditiously. We need to work on those laws. We need to work on, again, I'll repeat, the internal democracy in the parties. We need to have legislation that even controls what parties can do. When you have a party putting presidential ticket nomination form at 100 million naira, gubernatorial 50 million naira, what is that? Is it a money-making venture? How do Nigerians participate? How do ordinary Nigerians participate in determining those who govern them or the issues of their country? So it's important that we still revisit that. We need to revisit the independence of INEC. This is very critical. We need to take away the responsibility for appointing the INEC chairman and the resident electoral commissioners from the president. It needs to be an independent body. In the manner in which it is constituted now, it is not independent in my own opinion.
Okay.
These are very fundamental things that need to be done. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, we need to address the issue of funding. All over the world, we know money is required for politics, for campaigns. But how do you handle that issue?
Okay.
This also needs to be something that legislation should handle. So yes, we have made progress with having enabling legislation, but we can even do more.
Okay. Honorable Waive, let me ask you a question on one of the issues that have been raised, and that is the selection process. Some of the people that are selected, in fact, let's just say that they shouldn't have been selected in the first place, you know, from the honorable, the level of the councillor in the local governments to the local government chairman and all of that, and on like that. And some of them, you hear the rhetoric sometimes, you're wondering, hey, wait, you are a federal legislator, you know, legislator. So talk to us about what political parties need to do. Difficult, but hey, it's opinion. So what are the things that the political parties need to do to ensure that we have the right selection of people that will be pitched for elections?
Yeah, that's a very critical aspect of strengthening our democratic institutions. First, I would want to make a plea to Nigerians generally, those who are educated, those who have the interest of this country at heart. Don't stay back. Participate in the political process. Join a political party. Make yourself available for elective office. Having said that, I would say that the political parties themselves must be transparent in that process of selection. The godfatherism, money politics must be done away with, such that when primaries are being conducted, they will be seen to be free and fair. The internal democracy of all political parties in Nigeria today need to be strengthened. I must also add that judiciary is a crucial part of the MISC. It's a necessity that the judiciary are able to perform their duties, particularly when it comes to elections. What we have seen in the recent past is a sad commentary. Currently before the House, there is a bill seeking to establish an election offences tribunal, such that we're able to deal with those things expeditiously, and our elections will begin to be seen to be free, fair, and credible. So judiciary itself must find a mechanism of checks and balances of those who preside over electoral matters, so that the results that come from the judiciary should reflect the will of the people.
Okay.
You can't lose an election and then purchase it at the judiciary. That's a challenge in the country today. And the recent changes or disciplinary measures the NJC took recently are good. We are hoping that there will be more far-reaching decisions taken, so that when you win an election, you can be sure that the courts will validate what has happened. We pray that the political parties will get it right and put our first 11 forward.
Okay.
And then when the process is concluded, the quality of people we find in the executive, in the legislature, will be such that Nigerians can be proud of.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, Dr. Ade, you have 30 seconds. Last words.
I would say that no matter how bad your law is, no matter the deficiency in your law, if you have good people at the ends of affair, then you're good to go. So, good people, upright people, righteous people, professionals should all troop into various political parties and let all of us participate, so that those that are bad there will outnumber them.
Sounds like you're asking for angels to come and vote. But thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Gbenga Aduyi is a chartered accountant, a lawyer, and public affairs analyst. We've also had Dr. Abiola Oshodi, former vice chairman of the APC in Canada, as well as Honorables Mark Bela, former member, House of Representatives. Oh, by the way, we heard you say that you want to go to the Senate. We'll send you an invoice. We'll send you an invoice for that. And Honorable Waive, who is Chairman, House Rules and Business Committee. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of the conversation this morning. So when we return, let's go from federal to states. What is the state of your state right now? What do you think is missing and what needs to be done to make your state better? That's up when we return.